Welcome to Show, Don't Tell, a podcast by TelScreen's team of Wes Harris and Kent Harris, sharing their stories of being in the eye care industry in their unique, punny style with facilitator Christy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of
Show, Don't Tell,
with your hosts,
Kent Harris
and
Wes Harris,
and your facilitator Christy. So this time I want to get caught up with Wes because I know he's been out and about, and I know I need to learn some new things. So this is going to be I'm sure, entertaining episode as usual. And for those of you who miss us at all, or miss the guys, not necessarily me, but the guys in our quote-unquote proverbial green room, we're close to ready to kick Ken out for his over-punning style some days.
Most days.
Just today. All the other days were just fine.
So if you ever catch him in an embarrassing pun, take a picture of that.
That was not what I thought I said.
And if you want to know more, call Ken. Call Ken and have that conversation. So, Wes, catch us up. Where you been?
So, last trip was beautiful Atlanta for SECO. And Atlanta this time of year is a hit or miss proposition. You never know if you're going to get the famous ice storm version of Atlanta, right, where school is called off because it might snow. And anybody on the interstate after it ices is going to end up in the shoulders
right,
because they don't get that down there very
exactly.
often. Or are you going to get the 70-degree version of Atlanta, the Hotlanta version happening early, like February, or in this case, the intermediate version. So we got the intermediate, a little bit of rain, a little bit of cold, a little bit of intemperately warm.
Partly cloudy, much like my brother before his first cup of coffee.
A little fuzzy on the edges, yes. But this year was different, not because of the weather, but because of the way we chose to do SECO. Typically, we have a booth, and anybody who's been on the other side of the exhibit hall aisle knows that you've got your 10 by 10 space or your 10 by 20 space, whatever, and you're on one side, everyone else is walking down the aisle, and you can't cross the line unless they cross it first, and so you're kind of pinned in and tied down to your booth.
Sure.
And that's 3 days of that. Well, now it's down to 2 days, but it used to be 3 days of that. That was about the maximum I could take of that experience. Despite all the great people we got to meet, it's just the sitting in a booth, holding down a 10 by 10 piece of carpet, just is not my idea of a great time. So this year was a little different because we did laser courses with NIDEC lasers, our imaging systems, and fabulous educators, Drs. Nate Lighthizer and Chris Roten. Esteemed faculty, 2 great laser courses with practice eyeballs and plenty of thumbs-on time with the lasers. So that's always more entertaining than sitting in a booth. And then afterwards, when the exhibit hall opened, we had a surgical pavilion for the first time with Dr. Rich Castillo from Oklahoma and Cliff Cottle from University of Pikeville as the main attractions, along with some optometry residents that were doing some of the education as well, going through the surgical fun stuff like dummy faces that you could suture on.
Not the education I was looking for.
Yeah, as well as laser procedure education. So we had, again, 2 NIDEC lasers in the surgical pavilion with practice eyeballs so that people could come up and learn a little bit more about laser procedures, get a little bit more hands-on time, see the practice eyeballs are amazing. Going back 15, 20 years ago, when a YAG capsulotomy was simulated with a little black box filled with water or saline solution and a piece of saran wrap stretched across it. And that was supposed to be the posterior capsule that you were zapping with the laser, just a piece of saran wrap. And it wasn't even close in terms of laser tissue interaction. Basically, all you got to do was learn how to focus the laser on the membrane and then hit the button and see the impact on saran wrap, but it was not even close to what happens with real tissue. That was 20 years ago. Now an ophthalmologist in Beverly Hills has built a business out of model eyes for every different procedure imaginable. So
I've not got to see one of these. I am very interested because for those that listen on a regular basis know that Christy's the one at the table who does not know about this stuff. And so I will ask the very simple questions because I don't know and I'm curious to know until we start talking about gross things. And then I just have to make sure I don't eat anytime soon.
Well, in these labs, we're just vaporizing plastic. We're not doing anything gross.
But I can only imagine, like, my imagery of a practice eyeball would be more like one of those stress balls that has a ball inside of it, and you, like, squeeze it, and this thing pops out. Like, it would be that thin, and there's, like, the goo or whatever, the gel that's in there to pop it out. So
These are water-filled, so they water-fill them to simulate the liquid that would be in your eyes. And then the other anatomical structures are built.
The vitreous is still actually just regular tap water. So, but you don't need the gel you're not palpating this eyeball. You're just zapping it with a laser. So you don't need the compliance of vitreous.
The whole thing is fat. It makes total sense. You need something to practice on. Not live people.
And you can only do so many cow eyes and pig eyes at...
Sure, yes.
No matter how many times someone said, in a pig's eye.
And there he goes again.
That ain't real practice.
So anyway, we had a lot of fun in the laser pavilion with people who were genuinely interested in laser and surgical procedures, office ophthalmic procedures that could be done in any state in which licensure now allows it. So that was a lot more fun than being tied to my own booth because I could actually walk the hall, see some people, hang out
when they're tied to their own booth.
When they're tied to their booth, and I know where they're going to be.
Exactly. Which is my favorite way to do trade shows because then I get to meet and greet so many more people that way, have those connections and those relationships. I was going to ask a question, but it would take us totally off tangent.
Oh, about bourbon?
That's not really where I was going, but it might actually be the answer to some of this stuff.
It does put me to sleep, so that could solve your problems.
Oh, that's what we need to put in his cup.
There you go.
When you are watching these people use the equipment to not play with, but...
Yeah, they're kind of playing.
Yeah, they are.
Right. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Like... Do their eyes light up because this is the thing they just love to do? And what are some of their stories? Like, how did they get in? We need to have some of those people on the show. Like, what got them inspired to even want to play with eyeballs for a career?
Yeah. So origin stories for optometrists are cool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it starts with I had an eye problem when I was a child. And I became interested because I had to learn about it to learn about myself.
Well, you mentioned that, but I was also out in February up at Minnesota participating in a laser education course, or a demonstration course, really, and got to hear one of those stories from a doctor from Colorado who was a third-generation optometrist. But she really started out wanting to be a pediatric surgeon and, had other medical aspirations. But then over the course of learning about or discovering what that entails and all the different pluses and minuses of those things, decided that, wow, optometry is really a great place to practice and a great service to perform in terms of a great medical trade-off of...
So it's a lifestyle choice.
A lifestyle choice, as well as, hey, I can help people see better. I can have a real influence in a small community because a lot of small communities don't have a lot of access. And so it motivated her to look at other options. And then... since she's from Colorado and they have privileges for laser, she was there to get additional certification as part of the continuing education requirements. It's unlike most people think of education as like, oh, okay, I went to school, I got a degree, I had a course, I'm done. That's not how it works when you're a licensed professional, whether it's an electrician or a doctor, or a medical doctor, or
Civil engineer.
a civil engineer, a lawyer, all of those. When they say continuing education, that means you're going to continue every year. You're required to keep up to date, not only with new stuff, but also refreshing the older stuff that maybe you haven't used. You know, we've all had stories of, hey, I went to college, I took a course in, you know, either calculus or English lit or something that I'd never used again. And that's not how it works for the medical profession or the legal profession. They, on anything that they're going to be used or expected to know, it's continuously refreshed year after year, opportunities for them, you know, to use that to refresh themselves on the latest techniques.
I mean, even in my industry of marketing and training and development, ideally, people would still be in continuing development because things change as far as, you know, techniques and methods maybe, or technology and new marketing channels and things like that. We kind of need to keep on in the know. What I learned in college about marketing is nothing when I actually apply. It was, could I make it through? But some foundation,
foundational. But there's no organization or state level or national level that's saying you must do this. And that's the difference on licensed professionals. There's some organization at either a state level or a national level that's saying in order to have this privilege, to practice, to do this service, you have to maintain these requirements. And that's great because that's setting professional standards. That's so the public is not potentially hurt by someone who's not up to the level of a professional standard in any of these professions.
So when you do these laser courses, even at a trade show like SECO, does that count for their continuing education, or is that just an example of...
So the laser workshops were part of the official continuing education program. And you're in the room for 2 hours or 3 hours, and you've got some lecture and some discussion, and then you've got some hands-on time, and that counts for so many hours of continuing education units.
And there is a regulation for what constitutes, what do you have to do to have something count for continuing education.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you leave for the restroom, your absence is noted. If you're gone for more than 10 minutes, then you lose an hour, basically. So this is policed continuing education because there are rules. So you can't be enrolled in a class and not attend.
So thus, I'm thinking of side business bladder bags.
I knew something was coming. Anyway.
So some continuing education in the exhibit hall actually counts as hours if it's an official presentation in a presentation theater or other space that qualifies as continuing education. Then you can get a credit hour for that. Anything that happens in a booth or surgery pavilion, I think, is unofficial continuing education. It's
because of marketing, there's no
it's knowledge, but
on marketing or commercial speech involved.
Yeah,
so.
In the exhibit hall, you can mix commercial speech with marketing speech with education speech, and it can all happen at once in a single exhibit hall, and so it's not pure education. So that typically doesn't give you any hours that count toward your continued licensure. It's just you're getting education because you're interested in a particular topic.
Gotcha.
So a lot of companies will sponsor a speaker to come by their booth and give a little 20-minute lecture on something very applicable to their product or a disease that their product identifies or treats or whatever. And so it's education, it's informative, it's useful, but it doesn't necessarily count as an hour of CE for your license.
Okay. All right. So...
Just too much information. Did you learn too much, Christy? Is your head exploding?
Well, this is going to sound so horrible, but I am the marketing person. You didn't use big words that I don't know.
So we're okay for now.
We're okay for now. I'm not blonde, so just so everybody knows, this is just not my industry that I'm in every single day. I did have to look up, the technical terms and medical terms and things like that you guys typically will spit out at me. That's why we even started a podcast, because I need to keep track of everything you're telling me so that I can turn it around for content, website, things like that for your marketing. So when you go to a SECO, so how was it different this time for you in comparison to the other experience? So having the booth versus roaming the halls, if you will.
Well, roaming the halls is great because you run into people. I mean, we've been going to SECO since 1999, I think, between Pat and I. So 24 years.
A bit, yeah.
This was SECO 100, so the 100th SECO.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been around a while.
You'd think they would change it to Findo at this point. And they would stop
Oh my
SECO.
God, he's never going to stop.
Well, one of the things we did find, though, was...
Thank you.
Dr. Christy Cook was president this year for the 100th SECO. And she and her husband, Dr. David Cook, not an optometrist, organized a very special reception on Thursday night.
Nice.
We had a Roaring '20s style party.
Nice.
We had the dresses and the hats and the photo booth.
Those are always fun.
And the bar, and the other bar.
Right.
They had the high bar, the medium bar, the low bar, and the ultra low bar. I was not invited.
And the
to
bar
any
that hits
of
you
them.
on the way out.
Right.
And then they had the speakeasy.
Of course.
So if you have the right postcard, you can get past the bouncer at the door.
Nice.
And go to a smaller section where Doctors Cook, with a little bit of assistance, did some bourbon selections.
Ooh.
So there was 4 flights, a flight of 4 bourbons to taste. If you can make it to the 4th one, you're doing pretty good. I got halfway there, and I was fine. That was enough.
If you make it to the 4th flight, you're in 10,000 feet. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, most likely. Generous pours, good times.
Oh, nice.
Some notes, some tasting notes. Here's what you'll, if you check the nose, here's what you'll probably notice, and the finish, you can expect this taste, and here's what lingers, and all very nicely curated collections that were pourable by the Georgia World Congress Center. So you have your rules. You can't get past the tax. I'm sure it cost a fortune. But everybody who was drinking bourbon thought it was worth it. So well done, Christy.
Congratulations. That's a good time. I love a great themed party, a reception that anytime somebody can lighten up a little bit, have some fun, a theme always works. I am that person. I am always there for a good theme. And then you add something like a speakeasy and a bourbon, like the full experience.
So if I had a pun-themed party...
No one would show up.
No. She said she likes a good theme.
A good theme.
Qualifier.
Party.
High bar. But in the speakeasy, I did get to see a lot of people that I've come to know over the years, and have a chance to just sit back, relax, and have some good conversations. And I'll keep them. The conversations we had in the speakeasy will stay there.
Stay in the speakeasy. Got it. Those are great. Okay, so then from SECO, then what?
I don't know.
Back to work. That's what that means.
What happened after that? Oh, yeah.
After bourbon, I don't know.
Flight kicked in, didn't it? So let's continue to talk about education for a bit, because
next up is the laser courts in Richmond, Virginia.
Yep.
So we're going to keep shooting lasers until everybody gets to, and there's only 50,000 doctors.
I love that. We're going to keep shooting lasers until everybody gets to. And they want to.
Absolutely. Any day you get to shoot a laser is a good day.
I mean, that's the theme party you guys need to have.
Lasers for everyone.
Lasers for everybody.
Eye protection optional. Manfred Mann's Blinded by the Light.
One of your high values here for TelScreen is education. And I know it's not just a matter of providing equipment for laser procedures, things like that. But you guys take it a step further, because when you talk about these relationships and you know the origin stories, you guys have been in these businesses with these doctors for decades. It's not just education about the piece of equipment. It's an overall holistic education. So talk to me a little bit about that. Who wants to go first?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind that hopefully will be the appropriate segue for my brother is that no one really thinks about when you go to see a doctor. They were once a student. They were once fresh out of college, fresh out of high school, going to college, going to optometry school, medical school, whatever. And how did they earn that licensure? What did it take for them to become an expert in the level of medical care they're providing? And you don't think about that. I mean, you think, oh, yeah, well, you had 4 years undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency. You think, oh my God, okay, that's, you think of it, maybe as so many years, but you don't think of how did it actually happen. Well, part of our equipment is trying to improve how it used to happen versus how it happens now.
So part of the reason we worked on our gold system after we took the pandemic challenge of what's the best we could do under 20,000. The second challenge was, okay, what's the best we can do at a price that's affordable in huge quantities so that schools could actually be outfitted with this equipment without breaking the budget. And that was one of the positive outputs of the gold system is schools can have cameras on every single slit lamp in first-year lab, in second-year lab, so that whenever students are practicing, instructors can see what they're doing.
So when do they normally, question one, is it normal to have cameras on the equipment?
So back in the day, there were things called teaching tubes. You had a beam splitter, and then you had this basically telescope stuck into it that ended in an eyepiece so that somebody could bend over and look down through this tube and see what one of the eyes was seeing through the eyepieces.
Okay.
And the professor would hunch their neck over and look through the teaching tube while the student was driving. Or the professor would drive and a line of students would form and they would come up one at a time, look through the teaching tube, and the professor would say, "Do you see X?" And they basically trained the students to say yes. And then the students would figure it out afterwards on their own. What was he talking about? What was I supposed to see? Yeah. And hopefully eventually make the connection between what the professor was talking about and what they were actually seeing in the slit lamp.
That seems so not helpful.
It was active learning.
Sure. Yes. I mean, you did the best you could with what you had to work with.
So add a camera.
Yes.
Now you have a monitor, 50-inch, 60-inch monitor if you want, and the whole class can look at what's on the screen. Professor can record an aspect of it, play it forward, rewind it, pause it, stop, use a laser pointer, use the old presentation tools,
what everybody takes for granted nowadays.
And say, "Do you see?" and wave their little pointer across the structure they're talking about.
Here.
Yeah. So we do a lot of gonioscopy as part of the laser course. And one of the key things is identifying the anatomy. And everybody sees the pupil. That's the hole in the middle.
Yeah.
Everybody sees the iris. That's the muscle around the hole in the middle. And after that, you start looking up the wall, and it gets a little confusing. Am I seeing ciliary body band? Am I seeing a scleral spur? How much of this is trabecular meshwork? Where does it end? That's Schwabe's line. Do I have pigment above it?
Is that because I see one of your screens is open over here with some images?
Yes.
Is that some of that?
That is, yes. And so being able to point out each individual feature one at a time, and this is why I think it's this versus that. It's either color, it's position, it's another structure I've identified, it's my wedge technique that identifies where Schwabe's line is, and I can go down from there. But that gives you the tools to now be 100% confident that you've identified the anatomy correctly. And one of the laser procedures for glaucoma treatment is selective laser trabeculoplasty. Basically, I'm dropping a little bit of laser energy on the trabecular meshwork, and then your body's going to come in with some cells and start cleaning things up and make things better, increase filtration. So if you can't hit the trabecular meshwork, you can't do the procedure.
Okay.
More on that later. More to come. There's some recent research that suggests that if you just throw some laser energy in there somewhere, you'll get a decent outcome as well. So they're looking at different modalities, including not having to do all the hard work with a laser, but just have the patient look at a fixed target and then send laser energy in through the sclera rather than going in and hitting a mirror and taking it out to the side.
Okay.
So
Okay.
new technology is coming out to apply laser energy in different ways. But right now, it's doctor-directed laser energy, and the doctor better know, what am I hitting, and how big is my spot size, how much power do I need, all the variables of the laser procedure in order to deliver the right energy to the right structure.
Okay. So at what point, typically, then, does a student get access to camera? When you say first year, second year, how many years does it take to get to the camera point?
Typically, most schools, I would say it's second semester of the first year is when you're starting to get into your slit lamp skills.
Okay.
And slit lamp skills include all the different ways that you can move the light, change the width of the slit, change the focus of the slit. Are you looking in the light? Are you looking in the shadow next to it? Are you looking deep behind it? Understanding how to move your light source, how to move your oculars, what magnification to use, what intensity to use, to illuminate the various structures of the eye and check for all the things that you need to check for. So the basic skills are starting to develop usually that second semester with a methods lab. And then you get to procedures like Goldman tonometry, where I'm going to find out the pressure in your eye by sliding this probe, and I'm indenting your cornea a little bit and looking at the reaction in the probe, making the Myers line up.
This is where you get the under pressure song.
This is where Christy faints. Anyway. Now there are some manual procedures, and
Queen and David Bowie would go good on that
All
segment.
right, I hear it under pressure. Anyway,
Ice, baby.
That's a whole other story.
Well, that's for when you faint. You get ice, baby.
The soundtrack of your optometric education.
Oh, well, there is that. That would be funny.
Well, that's
And so
actually-
eventually, by the time you're a third-year student, you're expected to be clinically competent. You can start seeing patients. Most optometry schools will have a clinic attached to them somehow, either same building or a clinical building in the vicinity or in the community, and students will rotate through in third year, and they'll be working at patients. They'll be doing their own exams. It'll be reviewed by a preceptor.
And they will have already had like a board test or a board exam to be qualified to do that, right? That's part of the
I believe they've taken part one.
Yeah. So there's steps along the way.
Yeah. But anyway, and then fourth year they'll have external rotations, not with the home clinic, but in private practices or VA medical centers, where they'll now be getting more experience with a broader range of pathologies than perhaps they had at home. But in a different setting with other professionals as guides. So it's very much a
supervised learning.
Yeah, supervised learning in which you're becoming more and more independent as you go further through your career.
Sure.
So first year, the first time you touch a slit lamp, the camera lets the instructors know where you're aiming, what in the world is going on, and how to provide corrective action to get you in the right focal plane and looking at the right thing the right way.
I would hate to be that student who totally messes it all up and the doctor's like, yeah, no. Stop, you just murdered somebody.
So, one of the laser lenses that we were using at these workshops at SECO, one of these lenses has a pit in it. That means that the laser energy actually started very close to the lens and moved backwards and caused a
physical damage
to the laser lens.
To the lens.
Now, to get a pit, that means you're out of focus. We estimated, the optometric residents and I and one of the doctors, we estimated that you were probably out of focus by about 4 to 5 millimeters, which is a huge distance in the eyeball.
Okay.
So it's, but part of the point of that story is it's easy to get confused because you have a lot of interfaces of different refractive indices. So you've got air to glass, glass to coupling agent to cornea, cornea to anterior chamber. You have all of these places where reflections can occur as you change from one index of refraction to another. And because of that, it's possible to get lost and not know how deep am I, how shallow am I. I think I'm in focus, I'm looking at these aiming beams, but in fact, I'm wrong because I'm looking at a reflection.
So you cannot just walk up to a slit lamp, look in there, and know what the heck you're doing.
It takes a little bit. It's a microscope on steroids. It's got a lot of variability that you have to manage.
And by a little bit, I believe he means 4 years of optometry school.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Or at least a solid year. I don't know how long they spend in terms of the first year labs, but when we say the slit lamp is an essential piece of equipment for an eye care provider, an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, it's essential. They're using it every single day on every single patient. It's essential. So
Got it.
Yeah. So the gold imaging system was designed to go on slit lamps in methods labs, first year lab, second year lab. As they're learning how to use the slit lamp and then how to do other procedures, this gives the instructor a way to see what's going on. All the classmates can see what's going on. So it's a way to learn from each other as you go rather than just having your 5 minutes and then you wait for your 5 minutes again at the next teaching tube.
Right.
So it's a way to be engaged in learning actively the whole time, learning from your own experience and also from everyone else's. And so that's part of modern optometric education is let's make sure that all of the learning minutes are valuable.
Nice.
Because they're expensive. Ask an AOD student. Get the most bang for your buck.
Awesome. Well, for anybody who is either interested in starting this journey of becoming an OD or ophthalmologist, or anybody who has somebody in study right now, probably needs to listen to this podcast because you guys know like what is the process for this, what's it going to take to get you there, and the fact that you guys as an equipment company, like a technology company, know so much about what it takes to become the doctor to me is impressive. Like I don't know other companies that get so into what your, for lack of a better term here, your best buyer, your target audience, what their life is like.
Yeah. And that really starts with Pat. The idea that I don't want to just sell you equipment and go away. I want to understand what are you doing, why are you doing it, what's your motivation, what's your lifestyle. And that unleashes the creativity of how can I make that better.
Yeah, and that really feeds into the philosophy in our research and development was when most companies develop software, the person writing the code is so far removed from the person using the code that it's no wonder that software is so bad. Just overall, it's just no wonder. It's amazing that software is even as good as it is, and we've all used some really terrible software. In fact, we're still using terrible software most of the time. But when you can understand the application, and instead of the job of, well, I just need something running as fast as possible, something that'll work as fast as possible, but instead say, I need something that's better or that works better. Now I have a reason. Hey, if it's harder for me to program something, but the output is so much better, now I can decide, yes, that's worth it. Because my time, any time I spend making something better gets multiplied by every person who ever uses it. If I save them a minute, that's worth 10,000 minutes of my time to development. And just that principle is how you add value. It's how Microsoft made a lot of money. It's how software companies, that's the only way they can make money, because it's expensive to hire software developers. I mean, we don't work for free. We have kids, we have houses and mortgages and everything else.
You mean they don't break stuff on purpose just to have job security?
No. One of the things developers hate is bug fixing.
Yeah.
Because it meant they did the job wrong the first time.
Or that something changed on them and now someone else broke what they did.
Yeah. Their elegant design is now broken by new circumstances.
Right.
Or by someone else's change that was really unnecessary, but it changed anyway, and now they have to deal with it.
That's a whole nother podcast. That's a life lesson right there. Awesome. Well, did you have any other updates before we close out our episode?
So part of what we do under the lifelong learning category, that applies to us too. So one of the fun new toys that Chris got was a 3D printer.
Oh, yeah, the 3D printer.
And when you look at in the old days, again...
And that wasn't 3Ds as in 3 very moderate curse words.
In the old days.
In the old. Keep going.
When you wanted to make a plastic part, you had to make a mold and figure out how do you fill this mold and the vent ports and all that stuff.
How do you inject material into the mold? How do you then
And after you take it out of the mold, how do you clean it up and make it presentable and have a usable part? And that was an expensive process, and every iteration was going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Depending upon the size and the complexity, yeah. So 3D printing unlocks the ability to design something, print it out, see what you've got, test fit it, make another change for tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars.
Nice.
Not tens of thousands of dollars.
Or tens of cents in the case of material.
If you look at the design time,
Yeah.
the material cost is minimal and always has been.
I think the bottom line of that, it depends.
Yes.
So you guys got a 3D printer.
So we got a 3D printer. And one of the things that we've been working on is aesthetics. You look at us, we're not the most beautiful people. We don't make the most beautiful products. We make products that are highly functional, very targeted, very intentional, and aesthetics has always been a second, third, or fourth place consideration. Doctor's time is first.
Right.
We've got to be efficient, otherwise we have no business being in the exam room. And so that has always driven us more than anything else. And then reliability. It's got to keep working. You can't afford to have this thing, working today and not tomorrow, and up and down, and become unreliable, because then nobody will use it. And if nobody uses it, no patients will benefit. So doctor's time, reliability, always been top of mind for us. And this year we're starting to pay a little more attention to aesthetics. Can we make it more beautiful? Can we make it more pleasing? Can we cover up some of the buttons? Can we manage the necessary cables? We've looked at wireless. Can we go wireless? Is it efficient? I don't know. But
And part of that is actually driven by, well, yes, it does look better, but still that's the side benefit of, in the past, we would take a lot of phone calls or a lot of complaints when someone would accidentally lean on the top of the camera, or a cover would rest on the top of the camera, and then in removing it, they would hit a button, and then now they look at the screen and they're seeing a test pattern, or they're seeing something doesn't look right, and they would call and we'd say, yeah, look at the top of the camera, find this button, hold it down for a couple seconds, and then, okay, is it all normal? Okay, great. And try and repeat that message over and over again. So we're like,
once a week probably.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe if we could get rid of that phone call, we would be more efficient.
That's true.
So we started 3D printing a top cap for our new Gold camera that covers the buttons, manages the cables, looks nice. It actually has some curves to it. It's not just a square block. So that's exciting for us, because we're learning a new technology, 3D printing, and applying it to make our product look better in everyone's exam lane. So again, the multiplier factor is we get this thing working well once, and then we can print these things forever, and everyone who gets a Gold system will benefit from it.
Nice.
And hopefully we'll then expand to other systems to address some of the aesthetic challenges.
Or we might start selling Yoda figures.
Either way.
That's your retirement plan.
There you go. Probably need a license for that.
Yes, a really big one.
We can only sell the yod figures. Or the yo-duh figures.
Oh, on that note, anything else?
A bad idea you had.
Oh, we're so done. Okay. This has actually been a very good episode, so thank you, fellas, for that. And yes, even Ken with all of the puns and all the wrong places.
Okay, Ken, you can take us out.
Welcome to this edition of Show Don't Tell.
No, take us out, not bring us in. This concludes.
No. Welcome to our edition. Start it over. This concludes an episode of Show Don't Tell, where you can find out more at www.telscreen.com.
Thanks, everybody.